everybody. We're back once again. It is Beer 30 Live. How's our Mary? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Good to see you.
Looking all
You're glowing.
Oh,
again.
stop! Would you guys shut up?
Be that way for the next 5 months?
I guess so.
Something
apparently.
like that. Shane, welcome back once again.
Am I glowing as well?
Yeah.
No, dude, I've never known you to
Glowing
glow.
in love.
Well,
That's a come on line if I've ever heard
Exactly.
one.
between our guests thinking I was a woman.
Hey, did I ever tell you guys my story about glowing?
Yes, you did.
I did tell you that.
Yeah, you
All right,
have
so we don't
told
have
us
to do that one again.
Yeah.
All right, good. Tell us about our guest today.
After the bachelorette
Yes, the
party or bachelor party.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Tell us about our guest today.
Our guest today is we have Merrill Watts with us.
How do you spell that? It's a hard name for people to get.
Which, the first or the last?
First.
Your first. Merrill.
That was a test.
Watts, W-A-T-T-S.
I spell it MERRILLWATTS.
Ah, see, you've had practice at that. And he is a colleague of mine at Merrillhurst University. He's currently the chair of the Business and Leadership program in the undergraduate college. And he has a very interesting background. And actually, we originally had him on to maybe talk a little bit about entrepreneurship and small business. But as we sat here in the debrief and the roundtable, we're going to pull a tangent and shift gears and talk more about religion, actually. And so, do we want him to do his? We'll wait after headlines, and then he'll do his.
Headlines.
Yeah.
And we're missing Pete again today.
We are.
Damn,
So- Pete,
stuck with the sound again.
And we are having technical issues. Our show from last week cannot upload to the website.
Yes.
So that's why it's not there.
if it ever gets there.
Pete will actually be out after the 4th, so he's got a few extra days in there for good behavior, and so he should get out there like July 5th or something like that. So he should be back for us next week to be able to
Out on good
out.
behavior.
Yeah,
is that-
he's out
Oh,
on
he
parole.
is?
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't it like next week that he gets out on parole?
Serving his
Oh,
time.
okay,
man.
I'm getting it. Yeah.
And Mary's a little slow, but
But
we
she's
love her
glowing.
anyways, and she's glowing.
She's glowing.
Please.
So we have some headlines today.
We do? What do you have?
Actually, I have one that just came through the other day about the Senate and the House in Washington, D.C. voting themselves another raise. I just thought
they
that was,
did.
yeah, isn't that nice?
How
I think
interesting.
the House got like 3,300 and the Senate got like 4,800 or something like that. So it never ceases to impress me.
I know. They're unbelievable.
Record deficits, people dying in Iraq and people struggling in the United States with health care and
More people going into poverty.
right. And let's give ourselves a raise while we're at it because we're doing such a good
Banner
job.
job.
Well did the sage of old proclaim, and that would be Puff Daddy, that mo money, mo problems. So
So true.
It's more the same. I rant about this all the time. The Democrats take over, and everything's going to be all good, and flowers are going to grow up, and everybody's going to be wonderful and rich and solve all the world's problems, and it's just as bad as it was before. And now they've voted themselves a raise. So how nice is that?
Well, interesting that you should bring that up because I have a interesting stat that I found that in the last 5 months, so this Congress, right, they've been around 5 months. That's about right. The Republicans have voted against cloture more times than the last 2 congressional sessions combined.
Can you explain what that is? Closures?
Well, cloture is when there is debate on the floor, basically. Right. Cloture is let's stop debate and take it to vote, basically. So you have to have so many votes to end the debate.
So why have
and
they
if you
done
can't, then you can't take it to vote. So, interestingly enough, our own Gordon Smith, who claims he's for the working man, voted against cloture so that the Employee Free Choice Act could go to the floor. And that would have passed had it gone to the floor, but it didn't. Mm-hmm. So that's some of, what's frustrating, I know, for Democrats is there are people there trying to do things, but we just can't get past all the political BS.
Well,
basically.
Speaking of political BS, Cheney never ceases to amaze me. So, now he's not part of the executive branch.
Did you hear what Rahm Emanuel did
Well,
with the bill?
They're going to try and put in a bill that says you don't get any money. Then
Yeah,
if you're
there
not part
goes
of
your house.
That's exactly
and
right.
no more whatever the plane is he flies on.
Yeah, sorry, you're not part of the executive branch, and all that
Did
money
you know
that we
what
give you.
his budget is a year
No,
for that office? Like $4.7 billion.
billion?
billion?
Wow.
I think that's right.
No.
Might be million.
No, that'd be done in a day.
I think, well, I mean, it's a lot. So they want him to go to a Senate one, which is, I think, like 100,000 or something like that.
Well, it's just been increased by
Anyways.
2.5% since he got a raise too, I guess, since he's part of the Senate.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, he's amazing. But, and then speaking of deficit, here's another interesting stat that I heard, that Bush's deficit is 2 times all other presidents combined.
Yeah.
That's insane.
In real dollars, though, you'd have to tie it back to real dollars. So that would be interesting, just because it's hard to compare because of inflation and different things.
Well, but-
what it really means.
I mean, this war alone, I mean, we're spending like, I don't know what a minute.
No, I'm not
insane.
saying, but in real dollars, it may not be as bad as it looks.
Wow.
I mean, because
My guess is it's pretty damn
But
bad.
it's going to be right up there with Ronald Reagan. We
I'm
can
not
be
saying
sure of
it's-
that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
The 2
it's
most
not good.
conservative presidents we've had in
Had
the
the
last
biggest
century
deficits.
have the biggest deficit.
Hey, I would argue that neither Reagan and Bush particularly is not very conservative. I mean, he hoodwinked the conservative base, and he does not act like a conservative.
Thank you.
Well, or the conservative has changed, and you guys just haven't realized it.
No, I think there are people who hijack agendas. You have a right, the right who hijacks conservatism and then hangs their hat on things like abortion and different things like that. And then you have a left who hijacks the Democratic Party in terms of their pet projects as well. It might be racism or something like that. So I think both parties are very, very guilty of that.
Well, Bush, I would say, is part of a neocon.
Yes.
It's a new conservative.
No.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know if that's new conservative or not.
And
It's
then,
just plain stupid.
and
if you ask me.
then the shill for the Republican Party or the conservative movement, Ann Coulter. Did you see her lovely behavior on TV this week?
I did. Yeah, she was.
She is disgusting.
Oh, but come on. So is Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. I mean, those guys
They
are
don't
horrible
sit and
sometimes.
call for the assassination of people like she did.
Al Sharpton has done some pretty awful things. I mean, you want to go back and start pulling stuff
Al
up.
Sharpton is not a shill of the Democrat Party.
And I don't think Ann speaks
Oh,
for.
sure she is. Sure she does.
Who puts her there? Who says she is? I mean,
Well, I don't know, but she got an hour hardball show where she said she'd like to see John Edwards be assassinated by terrorists while wearing her crucifix around her neck. Good segue into our religious topic today.
That chick's
And
just weird.
The day before, mocking that family for the death of their son. I mean, it's insanely cruel and disgusting.
Yeah, that does not speak for anybody, to me, who's sane and of the right mind. When I think of conservatism, I think of somebody, and maybe this is just me, I tend to be conservatively or fiscally pretty conservative, but when it comes to social policies, I tend to be pretty liberal. So there's a nice balance, fair and balanced mix.
Yeah. Well, that's what's interesting. When the Corey Chisholm was on our show, or Kari Chisholm, I pronounced his name wrong. What he said is that when you do like polls and you sit and actually interview people, that people are typically more left than they think when you start talking the social issues with them. Most
Yes.
people do sit over on the left side.
But we're tired of
But-
the tax side and the number of taxes that we pay, which is astronomical, and a social welfare system that enables people to.
Well, but we
Not
weren't
contribute.
paying enormous taxes under Clinton, and the economy got better, and more people got out of welfare, and more people were working, and I think there is a balance.
There's a balance, absolutely.
So that would just be my opinion there. Shane, what do you have?
Well, mine's completely not politically related.
Well,
Well, maybe one is. We could look at it. Well, so an article in the New York Times says that the city is asking people to seek permits and insurance for public photography. So the city of New York. So basically they're saying that they're going to require any group of 2 or more people who want to use a camera in a single public location for more than half an hour, they need to get a city permit and insurance.
Why?
Well, basically they're trying to just make sure that things are going through the right channels, I guess. I mean, there's no.
Are they afraid of people making documentaries?
Well, that's what
I
they're
don't
saying.
get it. Or
The-
just
the-
a
it
tourist
says-
taking pictures.
Some tourists, amateur photographers, even would-be filmmakers hoping to make it big on YouTube could soon be forced to obtain a city
Okay.
permit and $1 million in liability insurance before taking pictures or filming
Oh,
on city
come
property.
on.
Well, you know,
Please tell
that's
us.
what that
So now
Obama
the-
ad, isn't
yeah.
that what they did? They
Yeah.
went all over New York
So now,
City
you know, the
and
New
made
York,
that.
the New York
It
civil.
wasn't the Obama ad, but that, the Obama girl
Right,
or whatever.
right.
So the New York Civil Liberties Union is all up in arms about this, you know, about infringing on people's rights and how it's going to affect tourists and families who want to take pictures. And the city's saying, no, it's not going to affect families. It's just going to be people who are out there making films. Well, you know, if you've got your camera and your kids and you're doing that sort of
And you're
stuff.
videotaping life in New York
Right,
City for your
right.
vacation.
You know what? I mean, go spend your time with the real issue.
the requirements, yeah.
I agree.
If anything, it's a way to raise more money
It
and
is.
tax
Make
people
money.
even more.
Yeah.
Come on.
So,
more money,
Well,
yeah.
but they're saying that the permits will be free, and that the application could take up to 30 days.
Well,
though,
what's
to
the
process.
point? I don't
Well,
get
that's the. You know, they were saying it went back to.
Other than adding bureaucracy to this.
In 2005, there was this guy Rakesh Sharma, who was an Indian documentary filmmaker. He was using a handheld video camera, just filming some different things in Midtown Manhattan, and the police arrested him because he didn't have a permit. He's like, well, what do I need a permit for? Nobody's ever seen.
Yeah, it's
and he couldn't
ridiculous.
find anything in the rule books about, or the laws about needing a permit. And he was arrested and detained.
As
and
the
all sorts of-
token communist, having just gotten back from China.
The token communist. You have to have one in every group. It's
We need the time.
So in China, you go to the World Heritage sites, and there are signs from the Communist Central Party Tourism Administration that tell you all the things that you can and cannot do. From spitting gum, which is absolutely prohibited, to taking photographs in large groups, to making noise, to laughing out loud, and in any other way disrupting the serenity and the peace of the other people. Now, if someone is having a wedding and they've got a whole area cordoned off with lights, don't walk here, don't talk here, can we have a quiet? That is a very big disruption of public space. And I think to just dismiss out of hand that having permits to take photographs in a public place is very short-sighted, and it's also arrogant that the person with the camera should be the person who owns the space.
well, I think if you're having a
That's
wedding,
interesting.
but if you're going to have a wedding and you have a permit and you have places blocked off, that's fine. I mean,
but that's not what it is. It's people who are doing their wedding shots.
Right.
And they see a beautiful flower, and so they go and they break the whole sidewalk. It's what it is.
And thus impede everyone else from walking down the street.
Yeah.
Well, that's...
for the
You know,
for the amount of disruption we are talking about. Should we build this bureaucracy for you're a family of four and you happen to have a camera and somehow you got to get some permit or they're going to haul daddy off to jail? Come on.
And that's going to happen in New York City? Give me a break.
Well, just the fact that it's being discussed, though, and that they've got
Is
these
there
rules
a
and
problem
policies.
that they are trying to solve?
Well, no, they said that
No.
what they're trying to do is just kind of corral in the public or the professional filmmakers and things like that.
now
But-
what I've always maybe wondered is the people that are unknowingly getting photographed. You know, they're getting photographed, and is that? I mean, that to me would seem a little bit more
well, but
where
professional.
there should be an issue because
But-
people are just taking photographs of you or footage of you, and you don't know.
But
it.
hold on, professional photographers know that you have to get a
But you
release
have
from
to
those
get a
people
release.
if
Okay,
you're going
so-
to use those for commercial purposes. But if it's just for you to snap photos for your photo album for home because you visit New York and you got to get a permit, come on. The other thing that actually might be targeted towards is terrorists.
right, and that's
So then they hook you up to the database. So is Jamie on the terrorist watch list and he wants to take photographs? And
So maybe he's casing the place.
yeah, exactly.
So on the great topic of religion,
So
which
let's
we're
find
going to
people
talk about,
guilty.
Yes.
Come on.
I'm in outer Mongolia almost, at a Buddhist temple area, a great shrine. And I go into the internet cafe to check my email. And I turn around, and there are 4 bald guys. They look just like you do over there, Jamie. No hair. And they've got these kind of colored jackets on, and they're going away, and I walk behind them. Violent video games. 4 young Buddhist monks And when I stood back without permission to take their photographs and it flashed,
You got in trouble.
they turned like this and then they hid because they didn't want to be perceived as violent Buddhist monks. Now, I kept that photo and I'm going to publish it and I'm going to make a lot of money off it.
Well, now I know that we looked at a lot of your photos when he did come back, and you said that many times you did ask if you could photograph
I did.
natives. And
Yeah, and when I didn't ask, it was usually with the police, and twice I got caught. Once they were busting this motorcyclist, and when they saw I was taking the picture, they were like this. And within instant, I could be in jail.
Right,
I'd have
so
the
you
camera
do what they tell you to
confiscated. So I walked right away very quickly.
Interesting.
Any other headlines for us?
Any more?
I do. Do we want to talk about this one, though?
Oh, sure. Why not?
All right. Okay. This one gets me all excited. I'm just kidding. But so this one's called "Finding Love Again with 100 Days of Sex."
Wow.
Yeah. So this career-focused couple, they're not
I'm
like.
never going to be in love with you, no matter how many days we
But I'm glowing. It was a career-focused couple. So I think the guy was a journalist, and his wife, I don't know, but they wanted to revive their relationship, so they made a pact with themselves that they would go 100 days straight of having sex at least once a day.
Okay.
And they wrote a book about it. Obviously they're trying to sell their book, but they had their challenges along the way and things like that.
Was it called Fast Sex Nation?
I don't know what it's called actually, but it could be. Yeah, they didn't mention the name of the book in here.
What were their challenges?
100 Days of Sex.
What, hard to schedule and
No, yeah, things like that. I mean,
Yeah.
being sick, being tired, the whole, gamut of all that stuff. So I just thought it was funny that was how they were going to revive their relationship, was we're going to force ourselves to have sex for 100 days in a row, and that's going to make it work.
Right.
But they said that, what they found was they were just more in tune with each other's needs, and that they were making the relationship a priority, and that so this was a part of, getting there. So some sexologist.
Intimacy was maybe the byproduct.
Yeah, some sexologist. And I love how they're called sexologists, too. I mean, that's just cool. But she said
Can I get a certificate in that?
Yeah. Well, actually,
How does one
hold
become
on.
a sexologist?
Hold on. This Dr. Ava Cadell is the founder of the Loveology University, described as an online university of mindful loving. So, Jamie, I'm sure you can get something from there. But she said sex is the second basic instinct after survival. That's how important it is. So it can become boring and predictable, Jamie, as you know. Same place, same dude, you're giving me the death glare right now.
I'm sorry you feel that way, Shane. Once told me it was exciting.
Anyway, I just thought that was, when you're scrolling through and you see, hey, 100 Days of Sex, got my attention.
Yeah, you have to pull that up. See, I pull up police find explosive devices in second car in London, right? And you pull up sexology.
Well, someone's got to be the even keel around here.
Somebody's got to lighten things
Yeah.
up.
Which they did. That is pretty scary, though. They found 2 cars today.
Right. And did they know what's the...
I don't think they found out who it is. Certainly no. But, there are still people out there who...
So no one's taking responsibility.
For whatever reason.
I thought it was Tony Blair and his gang who had... No, it wasn't him.
That would be a question. Do they take responsibility when it gets thwarted, when it doesn't go through? I mean, you know how they do after the fact,
But a lot of times, though, you can't even believe them because 10 different groups will take responsibility because they all want credit.
They just want their name. Yeah, you never know.
I don't know, but there are still some very, very bad people out there trying to do some pretty awful stuff. So vote Republican.
There's always going to be bad people. So vote Republicans so you can put more of those bad people in office. You set yourself up.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Well, my last one was just a little bit about the Supreme Court, and in particular, John Roberts and Alito, who, during their confirmation hearing said that, of course, they respect precedents and respect law. And they've been on quite a tirade lately, putting holes in long-term standing laws. The one being yesterday is kind of basically taking a huge whack to Brown versus the Board of Education.
Whoa! What did they?
Well, basically, they said that in this one school district, the court ruled against 2 state school districts that used pupils' race in making admissions decisions designed to promote racial diversity. And so,
well, that's been going on for a while. They voted against a couple of colleges that had done that too, who were using race as
University of Michigan was a big one, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't too long ago, so this sounds like the same. I didn't really read into it, but it sounds like the same thing.
it may be, although there's something I can't remember exactly, but there was something slightly different with
Well,
the
I think
colleges.
the college thing was all about financial aid. It was about funding, and that they couldn't have federally funded programs that didn't meet the the discrimination issue. Public schools are a very different beast.
Oh, so public schools who are using race as a way to promote their diversity and letting certain people in and not people in.
Right.
And the Supreme Court saying that they can't do that.
Right. So thus kind of going back to, in a way, promoting segregation. I mean, if a school wants to sit and say we're all white,
well,
then
it'd be interesting. I'll have to read into it, but did the Supreme Court basically say though that, like businesses, you should have a population that mimics your community? I mean, I'm going to guess.
Right. Well, the thing I keep going back to, and I'm not very versed in public schools, but don't you have to be in that district, right, to go to school there? You kind of have to be in that school district.
Well,
I'm confused.
So,
I mean, I guess we'll have to.
Well, I don't think it tells. I mean, we'd have to really look up that that actual lawsuit to see what it was. But it doesn't sound.
It was a white family wanting to get into a particular school, not getting in because the priorities went siblings first. If you had a sibling in the school, you went second.
This case was.
Yeah, second. Okay. It was ethnic, or it was race, and they basically said that you can't do it explicitly like that. Right. Although there are screens, economic, socioeconomic levels, etc., that might have the same impact, and that it is not necessarily evil to try to mirror the society or to try to affect the mix and the diversity. But to explicitly say race is going to be one of the top priorities.
Right, you can't do that.
But it was a 4-4 decision, and the
deciding vote was Roberts, wasn't it?
The deciding vote, well, it wasn't. It was Roberts, but I think it was Kennedy who went on for 21 minutes, the longest ever at the bench, saying why he totally disagreed with the majority opinion, even though he signed on and said yes, and said this is not a significant. This is not the wholesale change that says we cannot do any more racial profiling or adjustments.
Interesting.
Wow.
Interesting. It says here in this article that John Paul Stevens, who is one of the longest-serving justices, he's 87 years old, appointed by Ford, also denounced the decision. He said, "There is a cruel irony in the Chief Justice's reliance on our decision in Brown versus Board versus Education. It is my firm conviction that no member of the court I joined in 1975 would have agreed with today's decision." So just, what I think is interesting, though, is, it just also shows that we have to care about judge appointships, particularly Supreme Court, when they're essentially there for life. And, it really, in a way, they lied under oath during the hearings when they said the way that they would legislate and think on the bench, and now they're doing the opposite.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's easy to say that you would respect the law and you would respect the wishes of the Congress and of the president.
No, it's the Constitution.
But this is the beauty of the Constitution. It's so open to interpretation, and it changes as we grow.
But how long has this been a law?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Over 25 years, something like that. I mean, they also did some stuff which I don't know the details of that, but to the Anti-Sherman Trust Act, which has been since 1890. I mean, that's some serious precedents that they're sitting and messing with.
I was a little pissed off about that one, too.
I mean, and I just sit and think, my grandfather was a judge and a pretty famous one in the state of Kansas, and known as one of the fairest judges in the state of Kansas. Has a courtroom named after him. He's been in lots of books, that kind of thing. And while he was a diehard Republican and a religious man, his first allegiance was to the Constitution and to the love of law. So even if something went against his personal beliefs, you ruled, in the fairest way based on the law, and I could see he'd just be cringing right now based on this.
How did you get on the wrong side of the tracks when you came from such good heritage?
Careful.
Well, you're just a very
Actually,
famous...
my grandfather was, when I say kind of diehard Republican, he was the typical fiscally conservative, socially liberal, actually. So,
Which is why I think the Republican Party
he was actually pro-choice, but really why? Because of the laws of what this country's founded on and that kind of thing. I mean, so, that's
Sure, not
despite
too
what
far
his
off the
religious
track.
background was. Not really.
Yeah.
So, and and I may be a liberal, but I believe in being conservative fiscally and making good, sound business decisions. I mean, that's not synonymous with the Republican Party.
It's not necessarily synonymous with the Democratic Party either.
Anyway.
We'll talk about that another time. Let's talk about religion.
Let's do. So we've got Merrill Watts with us, and already did a little bit of introduction, but he got a very interesting background. So why don't we let you kind of tell us your interested, first of all, your interesting religious makeup, maybe, if you will. And
give us a foundation.
Yes.
All right. So I grew up in a Salt Lake City conservative East Bench Mormon household. My father and mother had 8 children before they knew how it happened. It wasn't 100 days of sex.
No, I mean, it worked for these guys, right?
1972, my dad's on a bus ride. He's a symphony orchestra conductor, reading a book, and boom, Jesus, Krishna, whoever it was, tells him, you know what? The Mormon church isn't it. And he started on this path, and he came back and sat down with the family and said, kids, I'm leaving the Mormon church. I'm embracing Hinduism. Gandhi is my new teacher, and I've become a vegetarian. Get used to it.
Now, what was your mom's reaction?
My mom is one of those simple, just do it. Doesn't matter what the belief, just do it and love people. And interestingly enough, 5 or 6 years later, my father reported that of all of the church authorities, of all the people he talked to, the only person who simply accepted him and loved him for that was my mother. And that's why they stayed together, in spite of the fact that they are in different universes and planets. So I was a Mormon missionary, straight down the line. Of all the 6 missionaries my father sent out into the world and paid for and thought he was being an irresponsible father, I was the only one who came back and tried to convert him back to Mormonism. I was certain I was going to get him. And I was the only one who went completely AWOL. And when I threw away guilt in 1987 because I thought it was a bad deal, it wasn't long before, everything goes. Joseph Smith, Jesus, God, the whole thing. Satan went a long time ago. And I spent most of the 90s just as an angry observer at organized religion. In about 2001, 2002, meditation, yoga, New Age, foofy, la-la, can't touch it, can't understand it, religion came into my life. And voila, I'm back in the Mormon church, full-blown participant, don't necessarily believe anything that anyone could articulate about God, but have found that there really is a universal sense that draws people together, and that the old institutions really did play a vital role in giving giving people access to something bigger than the three-dimensional world in which they live. And now it seems...
So would you maybe call that spirituality?
Sure.
That there's a feeling and cohesiveness that comes kind of through spirituality that people need and thrive on.
So when people ask me from 1993 until 2005, did I believe in God? And I said, well, no, but I do believe in radio waves. And I think that if anything describes God, a radio wave does. Somewhere on the Hertz cycle, down at 5 or 6 or 7, where the Earth vibrates, all the way up to the far infrared waves on the other end. I can't see most of that stuff. I don't understand, but I can sometimes feel the impact. And as in doing this podcast, I have no idea how wireless does it. I can't imagine how it works. But I can accept the fact that if something's vibrating at a frequency that I don't see or understand, there may be things going on that we don't understand in this three-dimensional world.
So he would have liked our Ghostbusters show. Then.
But I mean, I think that is kind of the spirituality argument. But how does that sit with Joseph Smith and the tablets and the lost tablets and the
Seer stones.
And,
I know Jamie's just dying to ask if he's wearing the what?
Jesus jammies.
Come on now. I do have to be a little careful. I know there might not be gazillions of people listening to this, but if my father-in-law picks it up, I'm going to be in trouble. Here, I'll just say briefly. Harold Bloom, one of the great literary critics of our day, in his book, The American Religion, identifies all of the principal American religions that have evolved, from Christian Scientists to the Southern Baptists to the Mormon. And he says Joseph Smith is the American prophet, the great American prophet. Joseph Smith simply took everything that looked like truth and grabbed hold and said, I like this. This is part of our religion.
Because wasn't he going through a very tough time, like his family was when he first started, trying to figure out religion and what it was and what his family was going to do?
He was an extraordinary, charismatic, psychic, creative, brilliant entrepreneur, city builder, politician, and we haven't had many people like that. And so, the big deal the Mormons do is, do you believe Joseph Smith is a true prophet of God? It's like, hell yes. I mean, anyone who can access the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh dimension of stuff, and in the way he did, is a prophet in my book. Mary, you're one of my favorite prophets.
Oh, please.
You ought to see her in our weekly meetings.
So, well, and I think really in all of the major organized religions, they all have somebody that plays that role. I mean, in Christianity, it's Jesus Christ. In Buddhism, it's Siddhartha. In Islam, it's Muhammad. All these people that saw things differently. And
Scientology, it's Tom Cruise.
Yes, that's true. Actually,
Who do you represent, Jamie?
Who is actually is that Hubbard?
L. Ron
Hubbard.
Yeah.
But no,
John Travolta.
But he is one of their prophets. I think they named him
Is
a
it?
prophet.
Yeah, they did name him a prophet.
Yeah. But where they...
I'm a prophet too. His movies aren't going to be doing really well. Does that make me a prophet? I mean, I can already tell.
You can already tell?
Yeah.
It just makes you smart, I think.
Yeah.
But really, right, and if you look at them, although I'm not as familiar with what Joseph Smith stood for, but when you look across the board, they all really had the same similar message in many ways, right, which was around loving yourself and treating people well and doing what's right and not doing unto others what you wouldn't do to yourself and living in harmony. And I mean, ultimately, am I right or am I?
No, I agree with you. I mean, I think they all have this. I mean, I think a lot like Merrill. I think modern religion has hijacked
Yes,
a lot
I
of
totally
spirituality and kind of used rules and stuff to push people and get them to do what they want them to do,
To
rather
control
than
them.
Yeah, and rather than focusing on the positive things that religion brings in terms of loving your neighbor and something bigger than yourself and that sort of stuff.
Well, I think our big one is loving yourself, which is I think a big issue.
I don't want to hear anything out of your mouth because I know exactly what you're thinking.
100 days in a... No.
Exactly.
I'm kidding.
Well, I think the most interesting thing about religion is that it would be very difficult to find a war that is not driven by religion. It would be very difficult to find conflicts that are not driven by God. And I get no more joy out of any story than the first time I went elk hunting with a bow. And the guy I was with, as we left his house, he as we're in the car, he goes, well, my daughter just said this prayer and said, bless all the little Bambis and the little deer that they don't get hurt. And that night, we have gathered some wild mushrooms that I found. We're making this little stew, trying to say the prayer. And he goes, and bless us that we'll be successful in the hunt. And I can just imagine if you were God playing ping pong, and the Muslims go, oh, no, 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 and then the Jews go to, and the Mormon. I mean, it's just an insane thing how much of our identity is tied to our belief system, and how vital it is that that identity be solidified and locked in and codified and canonized so that it can't change and it becomes the anchor. Therefore, everybody else has to be wrong or different, and we're the only right ones.
Yeah.
And that is the control that the churches have had, and they are the institutions, just like government, which I think is becoming more and more obsolete as information becomes more and more accessible, and we no longer have to rely on a few to
make our
provide
decisions.
the decision-making.
Well, and I think the one thing that has really kind of bothered me that has seemed to come to the forefront, I mean, it's been going on for a very long time. This isn't anything new. But how much people hate and hide behind the shield of God. They justify their hate because they say it's not what God would have wanted. And it's just like that, to me, is the complete opposite of what it all stands for.
I think it's a fear of lack of control of things, though. I mean, to me, that's what religion comes down to. There are things we can't control, like dying, and to a sense we can in some things, but let's
But it's going to
create
happen,
something.
so there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, so let's create something that makes it better, and that we can feel like we have control over it, and that, that's where that comes in. Hiding behind that the fear of God is hiding behind your lack of control over things.
That's a good point, yeah.
You also look at the history of religion, and almost all religious traditions come out of some oppression period.
Yes, exactly.
That is, how do we give hope to the people who are in a hopeless situation? And we say, well, the next station is going to be better. If you endure this one, if you're meek, if you're humble, if you're poor, if you're beat up, if you're abused, if you're whatever, the next one's going to be good if you believe, if you do whatever. And then that happens, and we get into a place like we are in the United States for 100 years, where we've got abundance, and then it becomes really difficult to justify the onerous load that you're carrying around of a religious structure that is, for all intents and purposes, outdated, outmoded, archaic, kind of difficult.
How does so you obviously have a very broad view of religion. I mean, there are people who have been excommunicated out of the Mormon Church for broad views. I'm trying to think of the lady who's the archaeologist who wrote the big book about she can't find any evidence of the big battle that supposedly went on that Joseph Smith talks about. But there's no archaeological evidence that ever existed, and so she's been, according to her book, excommunicated. So, how does that work? Yeah. I mean, she's questioning one of the premises of the religion, and it has a more worldview.
I think the culmination of Mormon excommunications and dogmatic control came in the early 1990s when there were 6 intellectuals excommunicated on Black Sunday in September of, I think it was 93. And these were very bright, believing, contributing Mormons who crossed the public line. It really doesn't matter what you say in private, but if you say this on a podcast and then it goes back to Salt Lake, then it's a problem. But if you say it in private conversation, it's not a big deal. And whether you're talking about Mother God or whether you're talking about Book of Mormon historicity, we face it, DNA analysis over the past 3 or 4 years has basically proven that there is no link to the Hebrew bloodline in the Americas. So what does that do? And interestingly enough, very, very few of the Mormons I know even acknowledge that it matters. It's like, well, they haven't found the truth, or we don't know what it means, and it doesn't affect the faith. And faith becomes very powerful in that way. So any church, I think, that doesn't protect its core by saying you can't say this, you can't do this, doesn't survive. Any church that doesn't have a way of doing missionary work and of bringing people in ultimately doesn't survive. And there's this tension. But you take a young church like the Mormon Church, is 150 years old, there's a lot more protection of what they think is the nut than there is of a 400
It gives them a bad name. I mean, it really puts them in a position of trying. It's like you could lump it in with Scientology and saying hook yourself up to the E-meter, and I mean it doesn't really do anything. So if we kick out people that say, well, I'm not so sure about the Hebrew bloodline because the DNA doesn't show it, then it's not very inclusive, and you put yourself in kind of a negative light, don't you? In terms of being
very much so.
intolerant or not acceptive.
So.
And
But if your community, if your entire life happiness, if the family values that you've got, if the everything that's good in your life is tied to this church, it's pretty easy to dismiss the stuff on the edge.
Right, because your self-concept is wrapped up in that. And as soon as you acknowledge it, then in a way, you're pulling the rug out from underneath yourself.
right.
And I would challenge anybody who wants to tell me that my faith is not valid to prove it. You cannot prove it. You cannot prove it.
Well, that's why it's called faith, you know?
It's faith, and therefore, in my book, if your faith works for you,
Right.
it's true.
Right.
Period. No one can disprove it. No one can prove it. So.
The thing I struggle with is when there are data and facts to dispute, and the people still say, "I don't believe it."
Right.
And then when you question them, they say, "Well, you just have to have faith." To me, it seems like that's just a really easy answer.
Well, it is. It's like, people will say, well, the Earth is really just 2,000 years old and all these scientists are wrong. It's like, I find that hard to believe. So what if it doesn't invalidate your faith if you were to say the Earth is millions of billions of years old? It really, if you think about it in a more holistic point of view,
right,
it doesn't invalidate what you believe inside, but some people take everything so literally, then it becomes...
What difference does it make, Jamie? What difference does it make if the Earth is 4 billion years old, the universe is... What difference does it make?
You're right, it doesn't.
It doesn't make any difference at all. What difference does having a community around you that loves you, supports you, cares about you, will take care of you when you get cancer, and will bring... What is religion?
Well, and strives to be better. You know, that's where I think the root of religion is you're trying to be a better person, whether it's, a better father, a better husband, a better mother, all that stuff.
Certainly we can use more of that.
Right, it's guidelines for that. And, I have the discussions with my dad all the time. He's a very devout Catholic, and the whole what was that big book that the book. The book.
The
Da Vinci Code.
Da Vinci Code. And so I had this discussion.
My father-in-law was upset by that.
My dad is very upset about that.
Fiction.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was telling him, and I said, so what? What if?
Right.
What if Mary Magdalene carried Jesus' baby? What if?
Right.
What's the big deal? How has it changed where you are now? You still believe the way you do, and you believe that because you want to be a better person and you want to provide better things for the people around you.
And I will say that I do agree that that at the true heart of religion is about being a better person. But one thing I will say is you don't have to have it to be a good person either. And that's one of the things that gets my goat is when Christians act like they have exclusivity on morality. And it's like, there are people out there that are good people that are atheists, and they're good people. Why? Because that's just what you do. Not because they're following any
Republicans
rules.
right now.
No, I'm not.
I was just going to say.
Not because there's rules to follow, just because that's what you do. And it's instinctual to them. That doesn't mean that they're bad people now because they don't think the way you do.
That's kind of the tribal sense that we have of protecting our family. Two really interesting stories for me. One is a missionary in Japan. You've got a country, Shintoism, that in the early 40s, the emperor says, "Oh, sorry, I'm not God. Screwed up. We're not going to win this war." And you get a generation of people who say, what in the world do we do now? Yeah. God has gone, right? And so you have this whole 50-year period where no one believes, but you have the mores of the society. Now, let's go to China. Now, comes along and says, "Oh, we don't like this superstition crap. So any effigy, anything that had anything to do with your beliefs, we're destroying. We destroy every temple, every icon, everything. The Cultural Revolution. No one will talk about it, even now when I was over there. Finally find this guy and I talked to him. So if it's not religion, where do you get morality? Where do you know what's good, bad, ethical?" He says, "Well, we teach it in school. We teach it in school. It's part of our communist doctrine." And we assign this to churches and to God, and in reality, there are human societal demands that require adherence to certain principles. And so, whether it's under the guise of communism or religion, I think
Communism is great because it always has the added benefit of taking all your land and property and money and giving it to everybody else too. So you're like, woo! Work really hard and give it all away.
Well, now let's just, I know we don't have too much time left, but before the podcast started, we kind of talked about the whole business of religion. So that might be just an interesting kind of way. It is a big business,
Absolutely.
Right? I mean...
So I don't know of any church that doesn't pass a plate around.
Right.
Like the Mormons. And the Mormon plate is, once a year you sit down with your bishop. Are you a full tithe payer? That is, do you give 10% of your income? And if the answer is no, then you cannot have the full rights, privileges, role of the full Mormon fellowship. And that accountability, which was kicked in around 1894 when the church was in a financial crisis, has literally made the church one of the richest institutions in the world. Because your salvation is tied to tithing. And tithing is not just give what you feel, give what you can. It's specifically, this is what you're giving.
Yeah.
Now, you can talk net and gross, but it's very powerful when all the benefits you get come from God, therefore you got to give your part back. But they also do a lot of good things with the money. We just don't know exactly what, where, and how.
Yeah, but tying salvation to money, doesn't that feel kind of, I mean, to me,
Is that
What else can you tie it
spiritual?
to?
is the salvation free? I mean,
Your acts, your
well,
deeds.
salvation should be free. I mean, I would think it's a set of beliefs, it's faith, it's a mindset that
Freedom isn't free, so why should
it's the same
salvation
thing.
be?
It's the same problem I have with Catholic Church. It says if you really want to get your sins forgiven, you got to go sit in that little booth, talk to the guy on the other side, and say all these things. And I'm like, wait a second.
But then then you carry through with the penitence, you know.
But see, then what the Baptists say is they think that's why they have issue with the Catholic Church, because you need to be saved and forgiven by Jesus, not just be able to each week walk in the booth and then go back to your business. But, you know, and this is also...
I'm getting an e-machine.
Too,
You can
why
buy them on eBay, you know. You can't? We need an e-machine. We're going to test ourselves,
Are
see
we?
how we're
Don't
doing.
knock
Okay.
that too much, Jamie, until you've tried it.
Karma, dude.
All right, let's
Karma.
get it.
Okay, we'll
But you
buy
know
one
what?
on the e-machine. We'll go on
But
the show.
here's one kind about the business. That's always been one of my philosophies about the Catholic Church. One of the reasons that they don't want to talk about responsible birth control and the message is procreate, because they need more members to keep this church afloat. So let's just keep procreating more Catholics to give us more money, despite what it might be doing on the resources of the earth or that kind of thing. So...
But it's also hard to change traditions for...
Yeah, God. I mean, well, we've talked about changing a culture of a company.
Oh, yeah, try
Which
Catholic Church.
has nothing
It's been
in
around for
terms
almost
of,
2,000 years.
Yeah, exactly.
you know, stamina and
Deep in.
I want to get one more dig in because
quick.
I am a very proud Mormon. I love the Mormon Church. I don't think it has anything to do with the one and only and the absolute place that everybody else who doesn't go through the Mormon routine doesn't go to heaven. But it is an extraordinary community in which to live and to serve. And the amount of service opportunities that one gets to help their fellow man with no strings attached, no money, no nothing, really make it a healthy place to
Now-
live and raise your family.
quickly, though, real quick question. What is the difference between LDS and RLDS?
What is the difference? Go to the yellow pages and look up Baptist, and you'll see Southern Baptist Convention, Conservative Baptist. The RLDS
so are you
split off
essentially the-
when Joseph Smith died. Brigham Young ended up taking the large crowd to the Utah mountains, and the ones that stayed around said, wait a minute, we think it should be the son of Joseph Smith who's the successor, not this wild-eyed Brigham Young.
Okay.
And so it was really a split
RLDS
over
is
succession.
Missouri-based,
There
isn't
was
it, right?
no clear succession plan in place, and that was where the
Well, and you have the FLDS too, right? That's a very fundamental.
Well, and there are dozens and hundreds of
Do you?
offshoots.
I've never done LSD.
Now, here's one thing that somebody told me once, which I didn't know if this is true, that when Mormons get married,
Yeah.
that the husband renames his wife. Is that correct?
husband renamed.
You know, that's such a twisted. What?
You've been watching too much Big Love.
No, this is just somebody told me when her friend got married that first of all she couldn't go because she wasn't Mormon and it was in a Mormon church,
right.
and that then her name changed because her husband gave her a new name when they were at the altar.
Oh, a new first name.
Yeah.
Oh.
Is that true?
Part of the Mormon temple rites include various rituals and ceremonies, but from an all practical standpoint, there's no need. I mean, you are who you are.
Your wife's first name is still what her name was before she knew you.
Yeah. But we do name everyone Mary now. So no,
Though on a more serious note, Merrill, so if somebody wants to give time and effort to help the church and people who aren't as privileged or struggling, how would they do that? So how would they?
They don't have the money to tithe, is what your point
so
is?
do they call the local church? I mean, kind of just how could they get involved?
There are endless ways to do it, and all you have to do is look up in any white pages under churches, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You can find 1 million bishops. It's the second biggest church in Oregon, as it turns out, and just show up.
Okay.
No problem at all. No questions asked. If you don't pay your tithe, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Well, this has been fun. In a way, I almost feel like we just kind of touched the surface. So.
Yeah, we need to do.
Well, I thought we solved all the world's problems right here. I mean, we threw out the bums in Congress. We took care of the Supreme Court, and now we've solved, true church religious issues.
That's true.
World solved.
Buy an
There we
e machine.
go.
You can buy plans on how to make an e machine.
All right. Well, I guess we're gonna have to look at this whole e-machine thing.
Yeah, because I have no idea what he's talking
Do an
about.
episode.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't want to
with
ask.
Scientology, but I'm not
You
exactly
hook it up
sure.
and it goes
It's like
into levels.
Napoleon Dynamite and that time machine that they
It's
had.
pretty
too.
much that.
With the crystal
Careful,
in.
he was a Mormon. Be very, very careful. Be very
That needs
careful
to
what
be
you
on the
say.
front of the show on the webpage for this week. The time machine
time
from
machine.
Napoleon
Dynamite.
Dynamite.
Well, we appreciate you
Thank
coming
you,
here
Mel.
and
Very
talking
excited.
with
Well, my
us. I hope
pleasure.
you
My
enjoyed
pleasure.
it.
It's
I always,
great fun.
I always
Great
love
fun.
sitting and talking with Merrill, so I'm glad he was able to come.
If you need to get a hold of us, it's the show at beer30live.com.
That's
or
BER30.
BEER.
Or
not Burr 30.
Or that too.
Beer.
Bear.
Burr. Well, that's how I
That's
call
how you do it in Silverton. Burr
Burr.
30.
Give me
Burr
I got a
30.
cold burr.
Shane at beer30live.com.
And now,
Jane.
and that's true. And we're talking about maybe taking next week off since it's kind of
Yeah.
4th of July weekend kind of thing. So we
I-
may be gone next week.
When I can
but-
figure out this newfangled equipment, maybe we'll get the show.
if we can get our shows up on the website and into iTunes,
good.
so bear with us. But yeah, so if we're not here next week, we will be back the following week.
Write
I think
us,
it's
send
the
us
13th.
comments. They're always good.
Definitely. What do you like about the show? What do you want to hear us talk about? That kind of thing. We're always open to that, and we'll try to find a guest. So, with that, we're out.